The Galactic Council Chamber was a place that seemed too large for mortal beings. It was said to be built from the bones of a star itself, stretching so wide that entire human cities could have fit inside it. Thousands of alien voices echoed under its shining ceilings, each voice carrying power, each voice carrying judgment. At the center of the chamber floated the symbol of authority, a great sphere of light that pulsed with every word spoken. On this day, the light pulsed red. The subject of the gathering was Earth. Humanity. A young race, small compared to the ancient empires that ruled the stars. Yet they had grown too fast, too bold, and too dangerous. Their wars had been brutal. Their resilience unmatched. Their spirit unbreakable. Many alien civilizations had begun to whisper a single fear: if humans were not stopped, one day they would not only share power with the Council, but they might rule it. Humans must be banished, one alien shouted, its voice like a blade cutting through the air. Others joined. They are reckless. They are violent. They are unpredictable. They will bring fire to all the stars if left unchecked. The chamber roared with agreement. The vote was cast. No one in the council defended Earth that day. Even those who admired humans feared them. Fear was heavier than respect. And so the verdict was clear. Humanity was to be exiled from the stars. The punishment was swift. Trade routes were closed. Fleets were ordered to blockade Earth. Colonies that had once thrived under human banners were abandoned, left to wither without supplies. Human ships traveling through alien space were destroyed, burned into silence. The stars that had once welcomed Earth now turned their backs. The galaxy believed that humanity would fade quietly, their voices lost in the endless void. But silence did not mean death. In the streets of Earth cities, fear spread like wildfire. Citizens looked to the skies and saw no ships, no trade, no hope. Markets collapsed. Food shortages began. Leaders struggled to hold power while their people shouted for answers. In the shadows of ruined buildings, children asked their parents why the galaxy hated them, and no answer was good enough. Yet beneath the fear, something else grew. Something the Council did not expect. Humanity had been cornered before. On their own world, they had faced plagues, wars, disasters, and endless cycles of suffering. Every time, they had risen again. Exile was not the end. It was a beginning. In secret chambers deep underground, human leaders gathered. Generals, scientists, engineers, and thinkers came together. They spoke not of surrender, but of survival. They spoke not of asking forgiveness, but of revenge. Their eyes burned with the same fire their ancestors once carried when they first conquered the seas, when they first reached the skies, when they first touched the stars. "We will not die in silence," one leader said. "We will rise in the shadows, where they cannot see us," another replied. "And when the time comes, the galaxy will remember the name of humanity," a third whispered. Factories hidden under mountains came alive with sound. Machines forged weapons in secret, building tools for a future that no one outside Earth was meant to see. Starship frames, once banned, were designed again in the darkness. They would not match the fleets of the Council in size, but they would be faster, sharper, and deadlier. The people of Earth adapted quickly. They planted food in ruined towers. They built shelters in caves and tunnels. They used every broken piece of technology, every scrap of metal, every fragment of knowledge. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was forgotten. Where other civilizations might have fallen into despair, humanity turned their suffering into strength. The Council watched from afar, believing Earth to be broken. They thought the silence meant surrender. They thought hunger meant weakness. But in truth, silence was a mask. Weakness was only temporary. Whispers began to spread among the stars. Merchant ships that dared to cross the blockades vanished without a trace. Patrols reported shadows moving in the void, ships faster than anything recorded, slipping through defenses like smoke. The Council dismissed these rumors at first. They believed no human fleet could exist. They believed Earth had been chained too tightly. But fear has a way of growing, even among the powerful. Back on Earth, in the dead of night, children no longer asked why the galaxy hated them. Instead, they asked when humanity would return to the stars. They looked at the skies not with sorrow, but with hunger. They dreamed of places their parents once spoke of, colonies, stations, and worlds that had been lost. Those dreams became fuel. The silence of exile was shaping something the Council did not understand. Something dangerous. The years of hardship hardened humans in ways no alien could imagine. Their bodies grew used to less food, less comfort, less safety. Their minds sharpened. Their inventions became crueler, more efficient, born out of desperation. A species that survived death on a hostile world was now preparing to survive in the void, alone, against all odds. And still, the Council did not see. They believed their judgment had ended the human story. But in reality, they had only written the first line of a darker chapter. One night, under the ruins of an old city, a new kind of ship launched. It was sleek, black as the void itself, and silent. Its engines left no trail. Its weapons were hidden until the moment they fired. The ship disappeared into the night sky, unseen by the Council's watchers. It carried not just soldiers, but a message. Humanity would not remain in exile forever. The galaxy believed exile had broken Earth. They believed humanity's story had ended. But the truth was far more terrifying. The silence of humanity was not death. It was preparation. And soon, the stars would remember the name they had tried to erase. Because when humanity rose again, they would not rise as a victim. They would rise as something far stronger. The verdict of exile had sealed the galaxy's fate, though no alien knew it yet. Humanity had been banished, but in the darkness of their suffering, they were becoming something unstoppable. Something that would one day shake the stars themselves. The Council believed they had won. But in reality, they had only awakened the storm. The days of silence stretched into months, then into years. Earth lay under a heavy shadow, forgotten by the galaxy, but not broken. The people adjusted to their new reality, though the scars of exile ran deep. The skies above remained empty, the trade ships gone, but the human spirit was not so easily erased. Where others might have withered away, humanity began to dig its roots deeper into survival. In the ruins of abandoned spaceports, engineers worked in secrecy. They scavenged old parts, broken satellites, and the wreckage of ships destroyed by the Council. Piece by piece, they rebuilt what had been taken. In hidden hangars deep under the Earth's surface, sparks of light glowed against the darkness as human hands shaped machines the galaxy thought they would never see again. Every strike of a hammer, every weld, every circuit repaired was a promise that one day humanity would return to the stars. But survival was not only about technology. Families learned to grow food in ways never needed before. Towering skyscrapers, once symbols of wealth, became farms with plants hanging from every floor, roots feeding through broken glass and steel. Underground tunnels filled with crops that could grow without the sun. Old water systems were repaired and purified, giving life back to cities that had seemed lost. The people found strength in unity. No one could survive alone, so they built communities stronger than ever before. Children grew up hearing stories of the stars they had never seen. Their parents told them of colonies left behind, of oceans on alien worlds, of skies filled with two suns or none at all. But the stories were not told with sadness. They were told as lessons, as warnings, and as dreams. The young began to carry the hunger of their ancestors, the desire not only to survive but to reclaim what had been stolen. Beyond Earth, the Council watched with little care. Reports showed humanity was quiet, locked away, unable to move beyond their world. Alien leaders called it justice. They spoke of peace now that humans were gone. They told themselves that the galaxy was safer without the aggressive species that never knew its place. But in private, some of them whispered doubts. What if the silence was not weakness? What if it was something else? The doubts were dismissed. Fear was replaced with arrogance. The Council was too large, too powerful, too sure of itself to imagine humans would ever rise again. Years passed, and the hidden work of humanity grew bolder. Secret colonies were attempted on forgotten rocks at the edges of Earth's system. Most failed. The planets were harsh, the moons unforgiving, the void merciless. But the failures taught lessons, and humans learned fast. What others saw as deadly wastelands, humans saw as challenges to be conquered. They built shelters where no air existed. They mined metals from frozen ground. They learned to live where no alien dared to step. One colony, hidden on a barren moon, survived. Its people endured storms of radiation and nights longer than months. Their skin burned, their lungs struggled, but they adapted. The Council never noticed. To them, humanity remained trapped on Earth. In truth, humanity had already taken its first step back into the stars. Whispers began again. Traders who dared to smuggle near Earth told tales of strange signals in the dark. Distorted messages, too quick to trace, speaking of new fleets under construction. Alien patrols reported glimpses of shadow-like ships that appeared and vanished without a trace. The Council dismissed it as lies, but the whispers spread. On Earth, leaders gathered once more in hidden halls. They spoke with calm, steady voices, the kind born not from hope, but from certainty. Humanity had survived the first years of exile. Now came the next stage. The rebuilding was no longer just about survival, it was about preparation. The dream of return was no longer a dream. It was a plan. Still, fear remained. Many asked, what would happen if the Council discovered them too soon? What if another blockade was sent, stronger than before? But the answer always came the same, there was no choice. Humanity could not remain in chains. The galaxy would not welcome them back. They would have to carve their place with fire and steel. And so, the work continued. Engines tested in silence. Weapons designed in shadows. Children trained not for peace, but for the battles they would one day face. Each failure hardened them, each success pushed them further. The galaxy had wanted to erase humanity. Instead, it had reforged them into something new. The Council believed exile was the end of Earth. They did not see that exile had only been the beginning. Humanity had learned to live with nothing. And a species that could thrive with nothing was a species that could one day take everything. The silence of Earth grew heavier with each passing year. To the galaxy, it was the silence of defeat. But to those on Earth, it was the silence before the storm. And when that storm came, it would shake the stars themselves. Far beyond the reach of the Council's eyes, humanity made its boldest attempt yet. A fleet of scavenged ships, patched together with stolen parts and ancient designs, set course for a world that no alien cared for. It was a dead planet, its skies filled with storms of ash, its ground split with rivers of poison. No one lived there. No one wanted to. But to humanity, it was perfect. It was a place where no one would look, no one would follow, no one would think life possible. The journey was brutal. The ships groaned as they crossed the void, engines straining, systems flickering. Families huddled together in the dark, holding their breath every time alarms screamed. Some ships did not survive. They vanished into silence, consumed by the cold nothingness of space. Yet, those who made it pressed forward. For them, there was no going back. When they landed, the planet seemed determined to kill them. The storms burned their skin, the air choked their lungs, the ground poisoned their water. But humanity had never been strangers to hostile worlds. Their ancestors had faced ice ages, deserts, plagues, and endless wars. This world was just another enemy to fight. Shelters were built underground, carved into the rock with crude tools. Filters were made to turn poison into water. Crops were grown in sealed domes of glass and steel, struggling at first, then slowly thriving. Machines whirred day and night, powered by generators that had once been meant for civilian use. Every tool, every scrap, every drop of energy was used. Nothing was wasted. The first years were filled with death. Many did not survive the storms. Many more starved before the crops took root. Graves lined the tunnels, and their names were whispered in the dark. But with every loss, the survivors grew harder. The weak died, but the strong carried their memory. The children who grew in those tunnels learned to fear nothing. They did not cry when storms howled above, they did not flinch when the earth shook. For them, hardship was normal. The Council never noticed. Their fleets did not patrol that far. Their spies did not think to look. To them, humanity was still locked on Earth, suffering quietly. But deep in the shadows of this dead world, a new seed of the human race was taking root. And this seed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The colony became more than survival. It became a symbol. They named it not for hope, but for defiance. It was proof that humanity could live where others could not. Proof that they were no longer bound to gentle worlds with soft air and clean oceans. They could live in death itself. And if they could survive here, they could survive anywhere. Rumors began to spread again, carried by traders who whispered of a human presence beyond Earth. Strange signals, faint but deliberate, had been intercepted. Broken transmissions that spoke of new beginnings, of hidden power. The Council dismissed them, as they always did. They had exiled humanity. They had closed the stars to them. Such rumors were nonsense, lies told by smugglers. But the whispers grew louder. Alien ships that strayed too close to certain regions vanished. Patrols reported shadows moving through asteroid fields, shadows that did not match any known design. Ghost fleets, they called them. Fleets that appeared and disappeared, striking in silence. The Council still denied it, but unease began to grow. Back on the colony, those shadows were no ghosts. They were real. Human ships, built in the dark, forged from scraps, but improved with every design. Small at first, fragile, but with each failure, they grew stronger. Faster engines. Sharper weapons. Stealth systems no one expected from a species locked out of the stars. The colony had become a forge, and every year, the forge burned hotter. Children who once played in tunnels now trained as soldiers. They learned to move in silence, to fight with weapons strange and deadly. They did not dream of peace. They dreamed of the day they would return. Their lullabies were not songs of comfort, but stories of battles yet to come. They grew up knowing one truth: exile was only temporary. And so, humanity's shadow empire began to grow. No Council fleet had seen it. No alien eye had confirmed it. But in the silence, in the dark corners of the galaxy, humanity was preparing for something greater than survival. They were preparing for return. The Council had banished them to die. Instead, they had given them the harshest teacher of all. The galaxy believed exile had made them weak. But what exile had truly done was teach them how to live where no one else could. And when they finally stepped back into the stars, they would not return as the same people who had been cast out. They would return harder, sharper, hungrier, and the galaxy would not be ready. The galaxy began to notice small things, details that did not fit into the story they had written about humanity. Merchant ships, which had once traveled safely across Council-protected space, began to vanish without explanation. At first, it was dismissed as piracy. Space was dangerous, after all. But the disappearances grew in number, and the ships that vanished were not weak freighters. Some were escorted convoys, protected by armed craft. They, too, were lost. No distress signals. No wreckage. Only silence. Whispers spread among the trading guilds. Some spoke of black ships that moved like shadows, striking in silence and vanishing before a call for help could be sent. Others swore they had seen flashes of light in the void, weapons firing in patterns no one recognized. Fear grew, but the Council ignored it. They declared the rumors baseless. They said humanity was chained, powerless, locked on their homeworld. The merchants were foolish, nothing more. But in the void, the truth was far different. Humanity's shadow fleets had begun to rise. They were not vast armadas like those of the Council. They were smaller, leaner, but crafted with one goal: to hunt. The first designs were crude, forged from broken ships and stolen parts. But with each battle, with each experiment, they improved. What they lacked in size, they made up in speed. What they lacked in numbers, they made up in cunning. Human ships did not fight like alien ships. They did not line up for honor, did not follow patterns of pride. They struck from the darkness, unseen until the last moment, and when they struck, it was always fatal. Ambushes in asteroid fields. Attacks in dead zones where sensors failed. Sudden raids against ships that believed themselves untouchable. Then silence again, as if nothing had ever happened. Alien patrols sent to investigate met the same fate. Entire squadrons disappeared. Fleets entered human-shadowed space and did not return. The Council demanded answers from their admirals, and the admirals gave excuses. Pirates, they said. Malfunctions, accidents, bad navigation. Anything but the truth, that a new predator was moving in the void. The silence of humanity was over. It had been replaced with something far more dangerous. On the hidden colony, engineers celebrated their victories in silence. Each captured vessel was stripped apart, Its technology studied, copied, and improved. Weapons once alien became human. Engines once foreign now burned hotter in human ships. Every encounter fed the forge, and the forge never rested. The soldiers of humanity trained harder than ever. They drilled in silence, moving like shadows, learning to strike and vanish. They had no room for weakness. Every mistake was punished harshly, for mistakes meant death. Their commanders reminded them constantly, the galaxy would not forgive them, would not spare them. Survival meant perfection. The Council still did not believe. To admit that humanity had grown strong again was to admit that their judgment had failed. And so, they chose blindness. But in the smaller halls of alien power, whispers turned to fear. Guild leaders spoke of ruined trade. Planetary rulers wondered why their shipments never arrived. Families mourned ships that never returned. And always, the shadow of one name appeared. Humanity. The humans themselves did not declare war. They sent no message, no demand, no warning. Their silence was their weapon. A silence broken only by the fire of sudden attacks, and the trails of wreckage left behind. To the galaxy, it seemed like ghosts. To the humans, it was only the beginning. And so the shadow fleets grew bolder. They no longer only hunted trade ships. They struck deeper, testing the strength of Council defenses. Outposts burned. Small stations went dark. Patrol fleets reported seeing strange symbols carved into wreckage, symbols that belonged to no alien language but to humanity alone. It was a message. Humanity had not vanished. Humanity was not broken. Humanity had returned to the stars, and they were no longer the same. The Council gathered again to argue, voices loud and divided. Some still refused to believe. Some demanded war, the complete destruction of Earth. Others warned that it might already be too late. But as they fought with words, humanity fought with fire. The silence of exile had taught them patience. The hardships had taught them strength. And now the shadows taught them how to hunt. The galaxy thought they had erased humanity. Instead, they had created something new. Something colder. Something sharper. The shadow fleets were only the first step. The storm was still building. Not every voice in the Council spoke with the same certainty. While most celebrated the silence of humanity as proof of victory, a few had begun to feel unease. In hidden chambers, behind closed doors, the whispers of doubt grew louder. They should have been destroyed completely, one elder said, his skin glowing faintly in the dim light of the chamber. Exile was not enough. Their silence is too convenient. Humans do not surrender. They wait. Others scoffed. They are broken. Without trade, without colonies, they have nothing. Exile has reduced them to a forgotten species. Let them rot on their dead world. But the whispers refused to die. Too many patrols had gone missing. Too many fleets had vanished into the void. Too many strange reports had come back half-finished before communication was cut. Some believed it was chance. Others feared it was something far worse. A few council members began to push for investigation. They argued that ignoring the problem would only make it grow. Yet, their warnings were drowned out by the voices of arrogance. For centuries, the council had ruled the stars without question. To admit that humanity was rising again was to admit weakness. And weakness was something the council never confessed. Still, not all alien races trusted the silence. A secret delegation met in the shadows, far from the official halls of power. They debated fiercely, voices sharp and full of fear. What if humanity returns stronger than before? One asked. They will come for vengeance, another warned. Then we must crush them before it is too late. Or we must bring them back under control. The debate fractured them. Some wanted humanity destroyed completely, their world burned to ash. Others believed they could be bent back into servitude, used as weapons instead of enemies. And a small, very quiet few believed humanity should be left alone entirely, fearing what might come if they were provoked further. This division weakened the council. For the first time in centuries, their unity cracked. Each alien race began to wonder not only about humanity, but about each other. Distrust spread in the shadows of their debates. The great alliance that had once ruled with a single voice began to splinter into whispers of doubt. Meanwhile, in the far edges of space, humanity's shadow fleets listened. Intercepted transmissions revealed the arguments, the fear, the cracks in the mighty council. It was exactly what humanity had hoped for. The longer the council argued, the more time humanity had to prepare. The more divided the council became, the easier it would be to strike. On the hidden colony, leaders smiled grimly as the messages played. The plan was working. The galaxy was not united anymore. The exile had done more than harden humanity, it had weakened their enemies. But humanity did not grow complacent. They remembered too well what exile had cost them. Families had been torn apart. Children had starved. Colonies had died in silence. They carried their grief like armor, and they refused to let it be wasted. The council continued to fracture. One world prepared fleets for war, convinced that humanity must be destroyed before they could rise further. Another secretly sent envoys, hoping to find humanity first and strike a deal before anyone else could. Old rivalries between alien races, long buried under council rule, began to rise again. And in the middle of it all, humanity grew stronger. They had no allies, but they had unity. They had no peace, but they had purpose. And purpose was stronger than fear. The galaxy believed humanity was silent. In truth, humanity was listening. The galaxy believed humanity was broken. In truth, humanity was waiting. And when the day came, when the council finally realized what had been born in the shadows, it would already be too late. The cracks in the mighty alliance widened with every passing day. And through those cracks, the fire of humanity would one day pour. The silence finally broke. For years, humanity had moved like ghosts in the void, striking in secret and fading into the dark. But now the shadows erupted into fire. At the far edge of council space, near a quiet mining world, the first great strike came. It began with a ripple across the stars, strange signals, scrambled codes that no alien could decipher. Then came the ships. They appeared from the void without warning, black against the endless dark. They did not hail, they did not demand surrender. They simply opened fire. The mining stations burned within minutes. Defenses, weak and unprepared, crumbled under weapons that tore through shields like paper. The council fleet stationed nearby rushed to respond, confident in their superiority. But when they arrived, they found themselves facing something they did not understand. Human ships moved faster than anything the council had seen before. They darted between asteroids, their engines leaving no trails. They struck with precision, not in waves, but in silence, each shot tearing through vital systems. Alien ships fought back, their weapons filling the void with fire, but the humans were gone before the blast struck. Every battle was a trap, every move planned, every weakness exploited. When the fight was over, the council fleet was in ruins. Wreckage drifted across the stars, burning silently. The mining world was gone, reduced to ash. And in the silence after the battle, a message was left behind. Carved into the wreckage of a council flagship, burned deep into the metal with human fire, were two words, "We return." The galaxy shuddered. Reports spread faster than the council could silence them. A single human fleet had destroyed an entire defense force. Merchants panicked. Outposts begged for protection. Ordinary citizens whispered in fear. The humans had been cast out, but they had not died. They had become something else. The council tried to respond with strength. More fleets were sent, larger this time, reinforced with the finest ships the galaxy could build. They entered human-shadowed space with pride and confidence. They believed their size alone would crush the threat. But pride is a dangerous weapon, and the humans knew it well. The fleets never returned. Instead, wreckage drifted back across the stars. Council worlds saw pieces of their mighty warships falling from the sky, dragged by gravity into their atmospheres, burning as they fell. It was not just destruction. It was a message. Humanity wanted them to know. Humanity wanted them to fear. On Earth and in the hidden colonies, the victories fed the people like fire. The time of suffering, of waiting, was ending. No longer were they only survivors. Now they were conquerors. Each battle gave them more resources, ships, technology. Every strike made them stronger, while every defeat broke the council further. The young who had grown up in exile were now warriors. They had never known peace, never known safety. For them, battle was life, and vengeance was purpose. They fought without hesitation, without mercy. The galaxy had cast them into the shadows. Now the shadows were striking back. The council chamber filled with panic. Voices once united now screamed at one another in fear and anger. Some demanded immediate retaliation, a full war to wipe Earth from existence. Others warned that it might already be too late. Still others whispered that perhaps humanity should be brought back into the fold before they grew even stronger. No two voices agreed. For the first time in history, the galaxy realized it was not the master of its fate. Humanity had returned, and their return was fire. On the edges of space, human fleets gathered. Not vast, not countless, but sharp, precise, and unyielding. Every ship was a blade, every captain a soldier forged by hardship. They did not speak of surrender. They did not speak of peace. They spoke only of the next battle. The galaxy had exiled them to silence. Now, humanity spoke again. And their voice was war. The council could no longer deny the truth. Humanity had returned to the stars, and they had returned with fire. Entire trade routes lay in ruins, stations burned in silence, fleets never came back from patrol. What began as whispers of ghosts in the void had become undeniable. Humanity was no longer just a nuisance in the shadows. They were a storm that threatened to sweep across the galaxy. Panic spread among the member worlds. Merchants refused to leave their home ports. Colonies demanded protection. Citizens filled the streets with fear, asking how a species that had been exiled and starved could now strike with such strength. And in the great chamber of the council, voices once united in arrogance screamed at each other in desperation. "They must be destroyed," cried one delegate, his voice echoing across the hall. "Every ship, every colony, every trace of them must be burned from the stars." "And if we fail?" another countered sharply. "Every fleet we have sent has been shattered. Humanity grows stronger with every battle. Are you blind? They are not the same as before." "They are fewer in number," a third voice argued. "If we unite, if we bring every world, every fleet, every soldier, then we can end this before it spreads further." The chamber erupted in chaos. Some demanded extermination, others warned of caution, but none could ignore the truth. The galaxy's pride had been broken. And so, for the first time in centuries, the council did what it had not needed to do in generations. They called for unity. Fleets were recalled from distant wars. Ships were torn from patrol duty. Armies were gathered from 100 worlds. An armada like none had ever seen was forged, thousands of ships, bristling with weapons, carrying the banners of every council race. The plan was simple: crush humanity in one decisive strike. The fleet launched with thunder. Citizens across the galaxy watched with relief, believing the nightmare was ending. This was the might of the galaxy, unstoppable, undeniable. No shadow fleet could stand against it. Humanity would finally be ended. But in the void, humanity waited. They had been watching, listening, studying. They knew the armada was coming long before it left council space. Scouts reported every movement, every formation, every weakness. Humanity did not see the council fleet as unstoppable. They saw it as a challenge, a test of everything exile had forged in them. When the armada crossed into human-shadowed space, they expected resistance. They expected battles at the edges, desperate defenses. What they found instead was silence. Empty void. Silent asteroids. Dead worlds. Humanity did not meet them head-on. Humanity let them march deeper. Then the traps began. Minefields hidden in asteroid belts tore through their first formations. Ambushes erupted from behind moons. Human ships darted in and out like blades, striking from angles no alien admiral could predict. The council fleet tried to adapt, but every adjustment only led them into another trap. They were fighting not against chance, but against a predator that had studied them carefully, waiting for this exact moment. Battles raged for days, then weeks. Every time the council believed they had cornered humanity, The humans vanished, only to reappear where they were least expected. Ships that had been separated from the fleet never returned. The mighty armada that was meant to bring unity instead began to fracture. And then came the counterstrike. Human fleets that had been hiding, silent and waiting, surged from the shadows. No longer were they only ambushes. They fought openly now, in formations sharp and precise. Smaller, yes. Fewer, yes. But every ship was manned by crews who had known nothing but survival and war. Every captain had been forged in hardship. Every strike was meant to kill. The council admirals, proud and powerful, realized too late what they were facing. Humanity was not fighting for territory. They were not fighting for wealth. They were fighting for survival, for vengeance, for the memory of every child who had starved, every colony abandoned, every voice silenced. The battle became slaughter. One by one, council fleets fell. Ships burned, stations collapsed, proud banners vanished in the fire of battle. And with every victory, humanity grew stronger. They took the wreckage of fallen ships, stripped them, rebuilt them, and turned their enemies' strength into their own. Every loss the council inflicted only fueled humanity's rise. The council had gathered its pride, its power, its might, and hurled it against humanity. And in doing so, they had given humanity everything they needed. The galaxy watched in horror as news spread. The unstoppable armada had been broken. Humanity still stood. Humanity had not only survived, they had grown stronger. The council chamber was silent when the reports arrived. For the first time, there were no shouts, no arguments, no arrogance. Only fear. Fear of what they had unleashed. And in the shadows of space, humanity prepared for the next step. They had defeated the armada. They had proven they could not be crushed. The galaxy's rulers had fallen into their own trap. And now, humanity was no longer content to survive. They were ready to conquer. The galaxy had changed. What began as whispers of humanity's survival had turned into undeniable truth. They were no longer shadows lurking at the edges of space. They were a force that could not be ignored. The Council's greatest armada had been shattered. Proud fleets reduced to wreckage. Worlds once untouchable now trembled at the thought of human vengeance. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy looked to Earth not with contempt, but with fear. Humanity did not rush forward recklessly. They moved with precision, step by step, each action carefully chosen. Trade routes once controlled by alien merchants now flowed through human fleets. Abandoned colonies were rebuilt, stronger than before, filled with weapons and walls of steel. And wherever they went, they carried a simple message: humanity had returned, and this time they would not bow. The Council tried to hold its power together. Meetings stretched for days, filled with desperate arguments. Some still called for total war, but their voices shook with uncertainty. Others demanded peace, even surrender, but no one trusted humanity enough to believe it was possible. The chamber that had once exiled Earth was now a hall of fear, its members trapped between pride and survival. And then the message came. It was not a threat. It was not a demand for surrender. It was a summons. Humanity declared that the Council would meet them, not as rulers, not as masters, but as equals. If they refused, humanity promised to bring fire to every world that dared defy them. The chamber fell silent. For centuries, the Council had dictated the fate of others. No one had ever dictated terms to them. Yet here they were, forced to consider what had once been unthinkable. When the day came, the chamber was filled with unease. Delegates from every world gathered, waiting, whispering, dreading. Then the doors opened, and humanity entered. They did not come in chains this time. They did not come as beggars or as exiles. They came in armor black as the void, marked with the symbols of their new empire. Their leaders walked with quiet confidence, their eyes unflinching, their presence undeniable. The hall that had once cast judgment upon them now stared in silence. Every alien voice that had shouted for exile now watched in fear. Humanity stood where no one believed they would ever stand again, at the center of power. The leader of the human delegation spoke, their voice calm but sharp as steel. You cast us out. You sought to erase us. You thought exile would be our end. But exile became our beginning. We are no longer the ones you can command. From this day forward, we are not your subjects. We are your equals. And if you cannot accept that, then we will make you. The words hung in the air like a blade. No delegate dared respond. No one dared rise against them. They had seen the fleets burn, the armadas fall, the silence that followed each human strike. The council, once so proud, now bent beneath the weight of their own fear. And slowly, one by one, the members lowered their heads. Not in respect, but in survival. Humanity had not asked for worship. Humanity had demanded recognition. And the galaxy, broken and afraid, had no choice but to give it. From that day, the balance shifted. No longer was humanity the outcast, the exile. They were a power that stood among the stars, forged not by kindness but by hardship, not by mercy but by survival. The council had created their own conqueror. And as humanity walked out of that chamber, their leader looked back only once, their voice low but filled with promise. You feared our silence. Now fear our voice. The galaxy trembled. Humanity had risen. And their empire had only just begun.